Great, great. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. What an exciting evening we're about to have. My name is, of course, Ian Nathan. I'm the writer-director of Aliens Expanded, and we're going to have a fantastic Q&A tonight. I just want to maybe update you on the production. We are, a good way into post and the edit. We have an assembly now of, I would say, roughly two-thirds of the film. There's a long way to go, but it's very exciting. A film has come together. I think it's looking good. I know it's early days, but something is arriving out of the mist of all the work that's gone into it. A kind of coherent vision. So it's a good place, I think, to be stopping to have a Q&A. And what a personality, what a person to have a Q&A with tonight. He has worked on pretty much all your favorite films. He's responsible for giving you nightmares. It goes, I think I call him creature effects designer, but creature effects maestro. It's Mr. Alec Gillis. And I suppose a good first question to ask is, what do you call yourself? What does it say in your passport that your job description is?
Well, first of all, let me thank you for having me on and having me part of Aliens Expanded, because anytime we can celebrate our craft of practical effects, and also this particular film is so unique and so special in my own personal history, but also in cinema history. It's an amazing project to be involved with. So thank you again. But yes, what do I call myself? I sometimes bounce back and forth depending on who's interviewing me. Sometimes it'll just sort of be a little bit more generic. Oh, I'm a VFX artist. If it's like the Hollywood trades or something, and quite honestly, they're uninformed anyway. So I just sort of say, yeah, VFX artist. It's an easy. Or I could be a character designer. Sometimes I do that because we do animatronics, we do monsters, we do makeup, creature designer. So I am known by 1,000 names. I'm
All
just going to
right.
put my glasses on so I can get a look
Dramatically.
at you guys.
It makes
All
you look
right, that's
so
enough
much
about
more
it.
intelligent,
I don't. Yeah, does it look more intelligent?
Uh,
Does it look? Yeah. Oh, not bad. Okay, good.
okay, let me start. Let me take you all the way back to, I presume, maybe around about 1984, 1983, and what your reaction was when James Cameron, Stan Winston said, "Hey, how do you feel about making a sequel to Alien?" What was your immediate response to that proposition?
I think it would have been sort of around 1985, I want to say. Yeah, because I came into Stan Winston's studio. I had been recommended by Jim Cameron to Stan on the Terminator, because Jim and I had worked at Roger Corman's, and we had had a working relationship for a couple of years there. We used to carpool together and stuff like that. Um, so watching Jim's rise was really a phenomenal thing, and I kind of spoiled me because I just sort of thought, well, that's how this is. You show up in Hollywood, and then everybody starts throwing opportunities at you. But I didn't really realize what a unique talent Jim was. Even then, I obviously knew that he was a huge talent, but so I missed out on the opportunity to work on Terminator because I was working on a movie called Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter. There's never been another Friday the 13th movie made
Nope.
after that I know of. But I had committed to that. So, but I did wrangle or wangle. I can't remember which is the correct. Probably wangled a an interview with Stan Winston. I want to show my portfolio, but what I didn't realize, he flipped through my book very quickly, and I thought maybe he's not that interested in my work. But what I realized was he had already, by having Jim's recommendation, he'd already said, "This guy's okay. This guy's great. He's in." So I just, connected with Stan after Terminator, and then we worked on a couple of smaller projects, but it was pretty soon after that that, Stan said, "All right, we're doing the sequel to Alien." And I remember, me and the other 20 somethings in the room were sort of like clutching our chests and like, and there was a feeling, I mean, throughout a lot of the production, there was a feeling of, oh my God, can we live up to this? Because you know, it's Alien. It's Ridley Scott. Was he a sir at that time? I don't know. But how are we going to do this? A bunch of, yahoos, with maybe not the art quotient of Ridley Squat. Did I say Ridley Scott? And so there was that feeling of like it was both a intimidation and maybe a lack of confidence, but mixed with a feeling that it's on and we have got to make this work and got to make it great. I mean, the script read great, so we didn't have and I don't think, by the way, Jim shared any of this lack of confidence at all. I think it was us because as the technical guys or the guys creating all this, you have to deliver on this stuff. It has to look real. It has to move. It has to be on a par with what was done by Giger and Ridley Scott and Roger Dickon, if I may add the name Roger Dickon, who was a monster builder on Giger's crew. But so, yeah, it was a little bit of dread and great excitement. But as things were coming together, and I remember I went over a little late, later than the other guys. I stayed behind to manage the on-set uh, shooting of Invaders from Mars. So we had giant, creatures, all, and then the other guys, Stan and his other four guys, went to L.A. Sorry, to London while I stayed in L.A. So I was kind of like, okay, I get this over with. This other movie, have fun with that. Super stressful movie, by the way. But when I got there, it was just a little bit before Halloween, so that would have been 1985. And I walked onto the set because they were already shooting. I walked onto the set of Hadley's Hope, with the corridors with a hole in it, and all the cool stuff, and there's Jim standing there in a Hawaiian shirt in the middle of it all, and it was suddenly like we were just propelled back to 1980. I guess would have been 5 years earlier, working at Roger Corman's, and he turns and looks at me and goes, "Hey, who'da thunk it?" And at that moment, I went, I don't. Maybe we don't have anything to worry about. This is, you know. And then when you saw the level of production design,
Yeah, yeah.
sets, and the power loader, like which we did not build, um, but it was like we were like, oh shit, this is a magnificent production. But will it be a good movie? No one ever knows because anything can happen. It was not a slam dunk by any means, but anyway.
So, I mean, maybe you can, you said you weren't involved in the power loader. Can you maybe give us an idea of what your remit was on Aliens? What your job basically was to do?
Well, so as part of Stan's crew, I was one of the creature coordinators, which would include Tom Woodruff, who I would later form uh, ADI, Studio ADI with, Shane Mahan, John Rosengrant, Richard Landon, and Rick Lazzarini. Those are the LA guys. And then also, there was a larger crew of British guys, all fabulous people, including Stephen Norrington, who would go on to direct Blade and other films as well. And these guys are, Julian Caldo was on that, who became a production designer, and so these guys are still lifelong friends, which was really awesome because we were all very young. Um, but Stan was in charge of all the organic creatures, and I had he put me on sculpting and molding the face huggers. I painted most of those skins, seamed and painted and assembled them and stuff like that. And then I did the bishop effects as well, of splitting Lance in half and dummies of him and the tail gag. And then I was also working on set with puppeteering of chestbursters, facehuggers, suiting up of alien suit warriors and puppeteering those guys, because everything back then was
Mhm.
cable articulated. So there were banks of levers that we'd all be stacked up on. It was pre radio control, or not before the invention of it, but before the real application of radio control, wherein you can like stack lots of controllers onto, the Hensons are famous for that, stacked controllers. So you can kind of consolidate a lot of that, but we were doing it sort of very old school. So that was kind of what I was involved with.
On the note of that, we have some questions that have been given to us from our audience, and a question from a Mr. Barry Dodds. The effects of Aliens are always my go-to when telling people that practical effects are far superior to CGI. And in your time, in your entire career now, uh, would you, if you could, go back in time and redo any of these special effects? And if you could, which ones would it be? Like, which effects are you thinking, I could have done that better?
You mean from Aliens?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I still to this day use Aliens as an example of how great practical effects can be without digital. I go, and young filmmakers are often surprised they don't know the history. They're surprised that there was no digital. They go, no, it's all full scales and it's miniatures and it's editing as well. Editing, has, I believe personally, editing has changed. I don't want to be a curmudgeon, but to say that it's suffered. But we did go through that phase where when CGI came about, it was so awesome to have that Jurassic Park moment where the creature lumbers in from a distance and you're looking at a sort of proscenium and it does something fantastic and you're in awe, which is interestingly enough sort of what Ray Harryhausen was doing, where it's sort of like you are now stepping back to watch an amazing scene and the intent is to inspire awe. And that's great, but if you're talking about a movie like Aliens, where you want claustrophobic, you want close contact, then you have to still, editing is going to not only save you but heighten that experience. So that's why we could, with the Queen Alien, we could have a full scale Queen Alien that had a couple of guys in it and a hydraulic head and cable operated lips and tongue and a marionetted tail. It was just like everything piled onto one. And then you could have a miniature version of it as well, all of which had boom supports and pylons, the full scale and the miniature, with no digital removal because you framed them out cleverly. And that's where editing comes in and the fast cuts and all that kind of stuff. But would I change anything? It almost feels blasphemous to say something. But to me, the things that bother me a little bit are the things that maybe people don't notice or maybe give it a certain practical charm. But like there are times when like an alien will grab someone and those long fingers were just hollow latex, right? So they were a little stiff. They weren't floppy, but they could dent. And I see it. I go, oof. There's even some stills, of like somebody getting grabbed and then the fingers got a nasty dent in it. I go, ooh. There's a moment where Bishop is, half a bishop, the demi bishop is laying on the floor and Newt slides by and he reaches out to grab her and he pops up out of the hole. And that is, mortifying when you're, a 25-year-old effects artist. So like that would be cool, but that could be touched up digitally, that wouldn't be a problem now. So I feel like it's 99% solid. And as I said, I'm always very proud to use as an example of what you can accomplish without any digital safety net.
As you should be. We have live people here as well, and one of the live comments we had really early in this live stream was from Per, who says, "Hey, Mr. Gillis, many years ago, you helped bring the alien life form to life for me. You scared the daylights out of me, while at the same time mystifying me, and I thank you for that." And I think we all share that sentiment, and with good reason. The movie, as you said, is a go-to, as Barry Dodds has said, is an absolute go-to for practical effects. It's a masterpiece in the art. And everyone who's joining us today, I would like to encourage you to take screenshots and share this on social media and tag us all, because this is one big celebration of not just Alec with us, but the film that has brought us all together. And apparently, according to you, Alec has made lifelong friendships with with several amazing artists as well. But you
Yeah.
did mention the suits of the xenomorphs. Um, and a lot of actors always take stuff from sets. And this is another question from Barry Dodds. Did you yoink anything? And have you kept anything? Don't worry, I'm
Who
not.
who
I'm not
are you?
working for Mr. Cameron.
Who's this Barry
In
Dodds?
your
And
luggage.
who sent you? Um, no, I didn't. But that was probably only because I would have had to throw it in my suitcase and get it through customs before I went back. Because a lot of it I know stayed there. And you remember the what was the name of the show in uh, ah, was it in Piccadilly Circus? There was a show of an alien war or
Oh,
something,
yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
live show where they just like, yeah, those are the real costumes, those are the real props, those are, they just like, here's the warehouse, have at it. Which so I know some things got, I was going to say pilfered, but I'll say filtered out into the public from that. I didn't end up with anything. I proudly wore a crew jacket until its demise from just being threadbare by the time I worked on Alien 3. Um, but yeah, in retrospect, I wish I did have some little piece of it, but all gone.
Can I jump in? Were you there the day when you got the original Alien suit? Didn't you get it sent to you by Fox? And this
Yes,
kind of weird, kind of musty coffin-like thing was open,
yes,
and there
it
was the
showed up.
original suit from the first film.
It showed up like Dracula's coffin, and and we unzipped it, and it was so fun because I think that's the strange memory. That's when I first realized that in England you have like a square inside your little Phillips head, whereas we had an X or something. So I remember we're like, how the hell do we open this? So we took it apart, and you're hit by this combo of latex smell. I love the smell of latex, but when you mix it with old human sweat and
Oh,
mold, it's an entirely different experience. But it was really amazing. We laid it out on a table like a like an alien autopsy, and looked at all the parts and pieces, and it just made me appreciate Giger's design and work even more. And it, like, I come originally from the low budget world of Roger Corman, so things that look amazing but are really kind of low tech, I just have a special place in my heart for that. And I realized, oh, this isn't even foam latex. It's gauze backed, or sorry, it's liquid latex backed with gauze, which is the stuff I was doing in my garage when I was a teenager, and I was always dreaming of foam latex. And here, the greatest screen creature ever was made out of those lower tech, and it's the strength of the design, the strength of the paint job, the genius of H.R. Giger. But we saw things on it that made me look at the film anew, like happy accidents that happen in practical effects that don't happen in digital, because in digital you beat all of the unplanned happenstance out of the effect to the point where it no longer looks like an organic real thing. But you know that the scene where Dallas gets it, and it's that one, where he
Yeah.
does that. I always loved that the palms of his hand had this incredible paint job where it was paler on the palm of the hand than the rest of the hand. And those gloves had that, but what it was natural latex. When you cast it and dry it, it turns kind of yellowish. And if you scrape the paint off, or if the paint is missing in areas, the yellow shows through. So the paint was painted very dark, with the dark metallics. And in my mind, I immediately went, holy crap, Balaji Badejo, if I'm pronouncing his name correct, probably had to scoot himself backwards and using his hands, to get in position, because we all know how difficult it is to get, paint doesn't always want to stick to surfaces, flexible surfaces. And I'm like, and it worked. It could not have been better. You couldn't have planned that. You couldn't have, you know, there it is. And also things like, well, Ridley was embracing it with Giger, with using organic things like seafood and tripe and stuff like that, that gives you a quality. At that time, it would have been very difficult to duplicate that translucency and squishy now we have silicones and we don't have to risk trichinosis on set. But yeah, so anyway, that was a really memorable and beautiful moment when we got to take it out and just really firsthand examine Giger's genius.
On the note of that, we have a question from Michael Doc Tower, who asks, what was the hardest part of the construction process for the bodysuits in the Xenomorph? So the next generation of Xeno, what was the more difficult
I just,
process in creating it?
may I say, I just love the traditional English names like Dark Tower. They're so.
Oh, no, he calls himself Doc.
I'm only kidding. I'm old school, but not
Mr.
that old
Dark
school.
Tower.
Can't
And
wait for that
also,
show.
is Per a traditional English name as well as
Per.
Potentially.
I'm sorry. So, what was the question?
What was the hardest part in the construction process for the bodysuits for the Xenomorph? The Xeno Mark II.
Well, you know, the script, the Aliens script, read. It was so action packed, and like we'd have hordes of aliens were needed. It was very different, marching orders from the first film, where the first film was a single creature that was sort of mysterioso and appearing and so on. Sort of there, lowering balletic movements, and this was more like, oh my God, we're going to have to get a bunch of stunt men in this and thrash them around. So Jim came to that with a very different approach, and mobility was key and durability was key. So he said, "Why don't we just do this like like a a kind of a skeleton suit, where it's a black leotard, cat suit, made of fabric, with denser rubber pieces attached to it," which was a great idea because fabric moves much more freely than latex does.
Mhm.
And so that was the approach, where we took a kind of a generic body cast. I remember having long conversations with Stan about, like, well, are we going to be able to find a 7 foot tall 170-pound guy? No, we're not going to find that. So I think we sculpted on a 6'2", 165 sort of fit form, and sculpted the rib cage and all that sort of stuff, molded those separately, so then the suits could be kind of assembled in layers that way. So they were very flexible, very mobile. But the danger of it is that we we thought, well, Giger poured so much of his airbrush brilliance into that suit with all the fine details, and you can't really do that as effectively on fabric. It doesn't hold a tight line. But Jim would always say, "Don't worry about it, because the way I'm going to light this with cross lighting is that the goal is that things that are dark will fall into blackness, and this creature will be defined by its highlights, by the specular highlights that the slime creates, not so much by your paint job." And that's a little disappointing to hear when you're an artist, because you want to like show off to your parents how good your paint jobs are. In fact, Jim was so convinced with that the story was when Tom and I believe John Rosengrant showed up for one of the first days of shooting with the alien suit, which I think was when um, the one soldier gets lifted, pulled up into the hive. So basically, there were aliens coming out of the hive, right? Uh, and they had to be very, very dark in order to blend in. That's the point. You can't see them until they move. And Jim saw the beautiful, nuanced paint job and went, "What the hell is this? We talked about this. It's black." And while the guy was standing there in the suit, shakes the rattle of a black spray can, and just starts spray painting right on the. And in retrospect, he was right. And it's also a good tactic as a director to kind of like establish that when he asks for something, he goddamn better well get it, because he's gonna throw a can of Krylon on it, and so then I think that may have adjusted some thinking after that. But yeah, so that was probably the challenge. Also, just as a side note, years later, when I had a chance to work with Ridley Scott, he did tell me that the suit did not move. It was not in the first film. The suit didn't move as well as he'd hoped, and he said he had to reconceive how the creature would be shot. And he said, and thank God I had those parameters because it made for a better movie. So he was a guy who, when presented with something, he didn't say, like, oh no, this is bad and wrong because it's not what I visualized. He adapted his approach. And similarly to the movie Jaws, that those films are better because you're seeing snippets of movement rather than. I think in the first Alien script, which I read quite a while ago, but there was a scene where the creature was going to fight with them at the airlock somehow. Like the crew surrounds it, and he's like throwing people around, and it's like it's more like Alien versus Predator, you know. So I think we all benefited by Ridley Scott's adaptability.
Can I jump in and just ask a question? Given Jim had this background in Roger Corman, that he was an art director, he was a hands-on guy in every sense. What does that feel like from your point of view? You've worked with directors like Ridley Scott, Robert Zemeckis, maybe people who are less hands-on. Does that make it easier with Jim, or does that make it more intimidating with Jim? What is the difference?
Well, he backs up what he says. He doesn't. It's not like he is just pulling things out of thin air in order to look like he really does. And granted, I've been in touch with Jim, but I haven't worked with him since Aliens. Because that he and Stan formed such a great partnership. But yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword. You kind of like your goal is to give the director what they want. Give support their vision, and you either do that by having someone who uses their words and says, "This is what I'm really looking for." Um, like a guy like Ron Underwood from Tremors, for instance, is not. He's not a creature guy, but he says, "Wouldn't it be cool if this or that?" And then you go like, Like in that script, the only description of the graboid worms was, it bursts from the ground and its head opens like a grotesque flower. So that was a great jumping off point, and that gives you like a lot of freedom. Whereas a director like Cameron will be like, "Here's the drawing I did over the weekend, and it's the Queen," and you go, "Wow, okay, this is great. This is what we're building." So either one works. But yeah, there is a little intimidation factor because you can't, if you disagree with someone who's very hands on, you really pretty much have to start with their approach, and you either show them it doesn't work, or I've been surprised plenty of times and go, "Oh, that actually does work. Now I learned something," because there's a danger in being an expert, that you become too um, calcified in your approach, and you go, "No, we do it this way all the time." Well, maybe this director wants something a little different, and that's part of the fun and the challenge of it.
It is very interesting hearing that both sides of the coin, where a director is completely oblivious to a lot of effects, can still make something incredible with the help of a great team, and vice versa. Like you said with Cameron, who's familiar with filmmaking with effects, filmed specifically for certain effects. But on the
Mm-hmm.
note of that, we have a question from Ian Mitchell. What was the balance between design and improvisation on the set for your work? And I want to add to that and say, was there an instance where you had to improvise and it came out better, as opposed to the story you told earlier with Cameron saying like the opposite when you tried to improvise and he was like, no.
Yeah. Well, this is at sort of the heart of practical effects. It's to me the happenstance is very organic, and being able to improvise is a strength with it. It's directable. Directors can go, "What how about this? How about that?" Um, the downside is that if the director is locked into a
Mm,
preconceived notion of how, and I usually like to, get into the director's head a little bit to see where they're coming from. Like a director who may have come out of animation it wants that pixel by pixel control over things. Whereas a director who comes out of working with actors is used to being surprised on the day, because actors are human beings and they'll come up with all kinds of crazy things, or make mistakes that actually work well. So, like for instance, some of our mistakes that have stayed in movies, in Alien Resurrection, when the newborn is coming and sniffing Sigourney, it does this thing with its jaw, like that, like little clips like that. That was a glitch. And Jean Pierre came running over and said, "Oh my God, I love that. How did you do that?" And we kind of go, "We don't know." And so, but we started incorporating it into the performance, which helped. Whereas, like and Jim is a very flexible thinker as well. So he's the kind of director that will go, "Okay, like we've laid the plan in pre-production, we know what we're building. Now show me what it actually does. I want to know that its strengths and weaknesses. How much can the face hugger grab? What how strong is it? What can it do? What can't it do?" So he can start conceptualizing, and an actor will do the same thing. Like on Aliens, when we were shooting our Bishop effects, um, Lance was always there. He wanted to see what the puppet could do and what it couldn't do. So, like, it's flailing arms. They were jointed arms, but they were marionetted. So we're up there with like poles. Me and Tom Woodruff are wiggling the arms around. So it's not, can't move its fingers. There's things it cannot do. And Lance incorporated that into his performance so that he could marry the illusion would be married. So he's sort of grabbing, and it looks great. Whereas another actor might look at that and go, "Well, that looks fake. I'm not doing that because I'll look like a dumb puppet." And then they'll do something that, and then there's a mismatch, and it's not. So it's all. I love that kind of serendipity of things. But sometimes I do remember once on one of the egg openings, I can't remember which one it was, but the egg opens and a face hugger is supposed to start crawling out. So it's a mechanical face hugger that's operated by two or three people, the fingers, right? Cable fingers. I've got it on a pole that is about a 7 or 8 foot pole, and I'm holding up all the cables and the face hugger. So it probably weighs about it may only weigh about 10 pounds, but if you put 10 pounds on the end of a broomstick, it's hard to, whoa, it's like all over the place. So, and then, and Cameron saying, "Pin it to the lip of the egg, pin it there. I can't have it floating around." And then the mechanical guys, which, with Steve Norrington saying, "Mate, you'll break the fingers if you do that." And I'm like, "Oh, fuck." Okay, so I'm trying to like angle it so that like I can pin it, but the fingers can be, and we do one take, and then suddenly Cameron's face is in the egg looking down. I was below it, right? I don't know if I made that clear. I was below the thing, a floor below it. And he sticks his face and he goes, "Alec, that's not what we fucking talked about." Oh, okay. Christ. All right. And I don't know how but you know what that led to was on the next time I had the opportunity to do face huggers delicately crawling out of eggs, I just did it as a hand puppet. I just had it,
Yeah.
it does not need to be on a pole. It does not need to have cables. It can just be doing that, articulated fingers, and it worked really well. So it's good to have a second and third and fourth draft on these things.
On the
Yeah,
note of face huggers, we actually had a question live brought to us. Is it true, from Mr. Blinko here, is it true that when the egg opens in front of Newt, it's actually raw chicken and noodles that's within it? Are you aware of
when
that
the egg
story?
opens, it's not exact. There is raw chicken
Okay.
because I went to the local market outside of Pinewood regularly, and it's chicken skin. So I would peel the
Ah.
chicken skin off, and in between the petals is that that gap, and I would super glue the chicken skin because I wanted to make sure there was a little bit of translucence, and it looks like you're looking into. And I was so blown away by everything that Giger and Ridley Scott did on the first one, where they used actual cow intestines and guts and stuff, and they used Nottingham lace, which was you're right, which being a kid from the Disneyland area, I've never heard of Nottingham lace before, but I bought that stuff too, and had to figure out how do I separate it from the stomach lining and drape that over the eggs. So yeah, there was luckily the child was never close enough to like touch it and get sick, but there were other people who could have. Luckily, I didn't ever get sick. But yeah, we were using a lot of that. And on Alien 3, we used a lot with the ox burst. We had entrails. Can I give you my joke that I just remembered from?
Go on then.
I said
Absolutely.
we used to use real animal intestines, but they're awful.
Unlike that joke, which is pure perfection.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Keeping to facehuggers from Ian Krabaker, we have a question. How did you approach sculpting the facehugger? For example, what detailed sense of anatomy did you and the team have? Given the design from the original Alien movie, what did you add to evolve for it? Was it, this is such a long question, was it based more on mobility or how it would look on camera? So can you go through your process of sculpting the facehugger?
Yeah, the I should mention that in that vampire coffin that had the alien
A
suit,
facehugger came out.
there was a face hugger. So it was like, it was like the rats in Dracula. And so we got to look at the face hugger, and the face hugger was probably one of my favorite creatures ever. I just thought the facehugger was a spectacular
Yeah.
design, which is why I wanted to give a shout out to Roger Dickin earlier, because I think he's kind of a little bit unsung in Alien, because he was a skilled creature maker, and I should look up more about him. But so I got to look at it, and it was raw latex.
Mhm.
And another one of those, we talk about happenstance, crude things being, way better than very refined things. Um, I don't know if you remember when it was on Kane's face, and there's like these dark tendons that are
Yeah.
in the knuckles, and I always thought, oh, it's like a boiled chicken. That's brilliant. Who does that? Who puts that kind of detail into it? Well, I looked at the face hugger that was in the coffin, and it was latex, slip latex, a little translucent, and it had copper wire to pose the. Well, copper attacks latex, and what
Gotcha.
it does is it darkens wherever it comes in contact with it. So right up at the top, where the wire was showing, was those dark little tendon veins. And again, it's like someone. Now, I'm not saying like, oh, they didn't intend it and aren't they lucky? I'm saying no doubt they went, probably like an artist does, shit, do I have to paint over that? Because it's mostly non-painted,
Yeah.
the genius of being able to go, wait a minute, the universe is giving me something here, and just leaving it. So anyway, back to the question. The thing about our face huggers were they really had to be mechanical. The face huggers
Mhm.
in the first film didn't have wiggly fingers and didn't run across the floor. These were like the aliens. They were a lot more athletic and nimble and all that stuff. So that's one thing I had to do, was I had to bulk up the knuckle areas so that we could fit pulleys and things in them, because those fingers are very thin on the very first one, which I wasn't super thrilled about doing, because there was such a delicate
Mm.
design of the first one. This one was a little more robust, same size, general proportions, but then in the body of it, I thought, well, what I really liked about Giger's artwork was that they look sort of like witch hands, or like old crone hands. And so I thought, well, I'm going to put some tissue thin, like skin, wrinkles across that. And I'm just going to like dive into the details of it, because I felt that, you know, we have to go somewhere with this, and give the audience what they want to see, but also give them a little extra oomph, because it's now 6 years later or whatever. So I did a little bit of that. I I wanted to have a lot of translucence, but there just wasn't the right materials that were flexible enough. Silicone had not come along. There were some urethanes and hot melt vinyls and things like that. Yeah, but they weren't really very practical to use because we had to make so many face huggers. So it was, a lot of layered paint, and to create the kind of translucent effect. And I did pump up the reds. I worked for Greg Canham for a couple of years, and he taught me that red equals life. And you can go, oh no, this is an alien. It doesn't have to have it. Yeah, I know. But touches of red, saturated pops of color, I think make them look more real. So those were some of the directions that I went in the sculpture.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Actually, everyone who's watching right now, can you on social media, when you are tagging us, as I'm sure you all are doing because I told you to, let us know which creature from Aliens is actually your favorite. Mine personally is the facehugger. I think it's an absolutely terrifying creature. It scuttles, it's frightening.
Yeah.
With the xenomorph, like full monster, okay, yeah, they're terrifying, but you're gonna have a pretty short time with it. Whereas with the facehuggers, living nightmare. No.
Yeah.
Ian, what's your favorite
I
creature from Alien?
feel like the one thing when I first saw Aliens that made just such sense to me was that Cameron made sense of the life cycle. He didn't he didn't leave it as magic or alien weirdness. He went, how does these creatures work? Where do the eggs come from? And obviously we hadn't had the Alien director's cut at that point. So that whole stuff with Dallas. So the Queen is the essential ingredient, really, isn't it? And that wonderful story about you had to kind of figure it out with bin bags in a car park. Is this thing going to work? I mean, Alec, tell us about just from the starting point of Jim's pictures to the set when you've got this 14-foot puppet, basically the journey of the Queen.
Yes, the Queen was. It's funny you mentioned the garbage bag test, because that was at Stan's LA studio, which is about a mile and a half from where I'm sitting here. and I don't really normally drive by it, when I'm out and about, but I will occasionally make a special trip and just sort of drive out there and I look at that spot. I actually thought about making a plaque and going out at 2 a.m. and sticking it on the wall and just say on this spot in 1985, because I think it's very it's profound for me, and I think that and we never thought that anybody would be looking at the pictures or the video that we took of that test, and it's kind of become iconic in its own behind the scenes way. But yeah, and this goes back to Cameron's ideas. Very very clever, outside the box thinker. When and it actually the idea of hanging a couple of performers inside a creature goes back to the Roger Corman days. He worked and I worked on a movie called Galaxy of Terror, where a maggot grows and becomes a giant maggot that has a relationship with a woman. And so that was a giant worm that had a performer inside it hanging to, and I think her arms and legs were out, so that it could have some movement. By the way, that suit performer who portrayed that became a Disney executive years later. Yeah, which is pretty awesome, right? I don't know if I should name her name because maybe these are not. She might get canceled or something. But anyway, yeah. So Jim came to us and he said, "Here's the draw. Is this basically a complete package, right? Here's the awesome colored pencil drawing of what you're going to build. The big arms are going to be 2 stuntmen laying sew. They're going to do one big arm and one small arm. You're going to give them ski poles and you're going to build the arm around that." And we were going like, well, the fingers, we can't make the fingers move. It'll be too heavy. He said, doesn't matter. We'll have insert hands that can grab at things. And so he had a plan laid out. Tail would be marionetted. There was also a mechanical tail that was built, but it was never shot because the marionette tail worked so well. Um, and we sculpted the miniature version in Los Angeles because we wanted to make sure we had that as a maquette guide for the full scale execution in London. And then in London we and I by the time I got there, I think the full scale sculpture was just about done. And we had some excellent British sculptures. This movie, by the way, I should say, was my awakening to the um, excellence in film craft in England. I was because we had our movie going on, and we had all these brilliant, fantastic English artists, and then at Pinewood also was Little Shop of Horrors.
Hmm.
So we could like sneak in and walk through the New York City backlots. So we had like sci-fi, modern, and old, broken down New York with all the details of that. And we were actually, there were times where we were like, I wish we could be on Little Shop of Horrors.
Phenomenal film.
This is amazing. And I was convinced when the Oscar nominations came out, I thought, I think Little Shop of Horrors is going to take this. And I believe that they might have if they had left the scenes of the creature on the bridge, the Manhattan
The alternate ending.
Brooklyn Bridge, because it was just like everything that you can imagine effects wise is in that movie. So, but regardless, what a gift to have going on at the same time these two amazing practical effects based movies, unique in their own way and great. Anyway, I don't know if I'm answering enough about the Queen, but I sure am talking a lot.
To be a fly on the wall for that would have been absolutely incredible, which leads me into a live question we've had, and that doubles in with a question that was submitted by user Spec. Essentially, people want to get into special effects. What would be your advice to a burgeoning talent to get into the industry today? If you
Well,
can provide any.
the landscape has changed quite a bit since I got into it. Like we have, you know, back then there was very little information about how things were done. I mean, you could pick up Cinefex, but I predate Cinefex. Cinefex came out, the first issue came out when I was working on Battle Beyond the Stars with Cameron in 1980. I remember this little magazine, we were like, wow. And it was like, such a godsend because you could read details. Prior to that, it was Famous Monsters of Filmland or fun stuff, but they weren't informative of as far as technique. So you had to kind of like fumble your way through things, make mistakes, take that hard slog of failure and which and okay. So the uh, so that was a downside, but the upside is there wasn't a whole lot of people doing this. We were a kind of a special breed of people that were going in. Now you have the opposite. You have a ton of information, but maybe not in practical effects, not as many opportunities. So I kind of say like, well, don't consider yourselves just a practical effects artist, although I want to see my craft do well, and I want to see a greater renaissance of it. We're in one now, but I want to see an even greater renaissance. But learn all the skills you can. Learn digital sculpting, learn about 3D printing, learn about Photoshop. I can't even begin to tell you how AI is going to change things. But learn the traditional stuff. If you can start with traditional, learn traditional, and then you'll be an even better digital artist. But kind of don't hobble yourself. Have as many arrows in your quiver as possible. And also, if I may say, if there's questions that people are asking that don't get answered, they can DM me on Instagram, and I will do my best to shoot them an answer. But I'll try to look at everything, and that's Alec_Gillis if you guys want to put that up. But I like to answer questions because I think it helps promote the art.
I wonder, Alec, because you've got this incredible array of things behind you. I know you're in what seems to be just a chamber of horrors, but also Aladdin's cave. Can you give us a little tour or a little explanation of where you are?
I'm going to do my best laptop cinematography. My camera work might be a little. So this is my new studio. It's called Studio Gillis. He's solo now. Tom Woodruff is living his best life writing and directing things back east. So this is some of the things that I have on display here. We did this guy recently for a music video directed by Abteen Bagiri. It's you can, if you follow me on Instagram, you can find the link to it. Oh, look at that! Thank you. This is an animatronic character. Personal project here that I did for fun and inspiration. Some various creatures, and so let's see, what would I? Oh, well, there's one of the original maquettes of the newborn alien from Alien Resurrection. Early days on that one. There's Jumanji, the monkey boy from Jumanji. That is a makeup from Bright that we did on Joel Edgerton. Sorry, I'm going to make people vomit. Here's a little thing that we did for Banksy that I'm not talking about anymore because, that's from Percy Jackson 2. That was a design exploratory. Oh, this is an Alien 3 egg. Alien 3 egg. That was actually done as, it's technically a miniature. It's like 2/3 the scale of the regular egg because it was only in a set. So they just, it was a set with no people. So they built the set as a miniature blob from one of the X-Men movies. Oh, there's a little hollow man because Kevin Bacon is 6 degrees away from everything. Let's see. Let me get you over to some of the alien stuff. This is a bust of the Predalien, which was the combo of an alien and a predator. So that is the ultimate mashup of franchises, I suppose, right there embodied in one character. Here is the head of the alien. This is out of the molds of our alien queen that we built for AVP, that was a blast. That movie was fun because we got the opportunity to kind of revisit the queen and make her as an entirely hydraulic character that was programmable and sophisticated, and it worked quite well in the film. And there was a digital version as well as a miniature version for egg laying scenes. This was a 3rd scale version, and then some other fun things, personal projects. Oh, and one of my artists created this little tribute bust because he loved that at one point Lance Henriksen was going to play the Terminator. Why am I? I'm swimming all over the place with this. I apologize. So Jim had done a sketch of Lance as the Terminator, and then the studio said, "No, we want Arnold to play that part." So he sketched it as Arnold, but Peter Murphy, one of my artists, did this thing, and I thought, this is so cool. I sent a picture to Lance, and he said, "Buddy, I love it. How can I help your band?" I said, "Well, come over and sign the jacket." So it's here now, and at some point he'll sign that. But that's fun, isn't it? And then we have lots and lots of other. Oh, there's the maquette of the Predalien we did for that. What else? Well, I can't. I've mentioned Tremors, so I should. This was the
graboid.
That was we did quarter scale miniatures. This was basically, 1989 we started on this project, and it was a Gale Ann Hurd produced movie. So we just said, Gale, we should do exactly what we did on Aliens, which is we'll have full scale stuff, and then we should also have a very, very robust miniature shoot as well, right? And we'll get the Skotak brothers in, and they'll do their magic with the tabletop stuff, and that's what we did there, which we're very proud of. That's another one that I can point to as being a pre-digital practical effects effort. This is a little bust we did of Goro. I don't have any of the original Goro stuff anymore, but this we scanned the head. I sculpted the head for the original. Hey, people say it looks like me. This is a perfect comparison right there. but I sculpted the head, and sculptors do tend to hold up mirrors and look at forms and stuff. So sometimes that happens. But he looks a little more like Thanos, I think. But anyway, so we scanned my original sculpture, and then one of my artists, Michael Epinette, sculpted the hands, and we created this. Let me get a little way. Yeah, this piece. So this is just a print, a 3D print. Here it's hollow, and painted up to look bronzy. Well, Point Break. These are the masters of the masks from Point Break, and of course the Wolf Predator. This is a bust. This was a not a Sideshow Collectibles. Whoops, I'm forgetting the whoever did this. Whoops, I'm not giving proper credit, but it's from our molds. And it's the Predator from AVP R.
Fantastic.
Anyway, that's kind
absolutely
of
amazing.
fantastic.
Just amazing. Yeah.
Oh, before you kick me off,
yeah.
I should let everybody know that I did some. My new studio did some of the effects for the new Alien feature that's directed by Fede Alvarez. So that was a blast. And just to be brief, I did some of the effects, and then my buddies at Legacy Effects, which was the former Stan Winston Studios, did a bunch of other stuff, Xenos and stuff like that. And then Weta did facehugger effects on it. So I got to be part of this like dream team of effects artists. And this was Fede's idea. He wanted to just bring in people he wanted to, because he's a huge effects fan, right? So I realized that my friend Shane Mahan, who he and I worked together at Stan's on Aliens in London, in the sets and all that stuff. And, he's been a buddy of mine for a long time. We're standing there now in what would it have been? I guess it was 2023, 2022, in the corridor set, which is really designed to look very much like the stuff from Hadley's Hope. And we're both sliming up our monsters, and we look at each other and go, it's like 1985 again, isn't it? And then one of the guys said, like, have you guys looked in a mirror? Because no, it's not like 1985. But it was a blast, and it was very heartwarming. Anyway, there. I don't have a good wrap up, but
no, that is a great wrap, because it brings us full circle. It gives us anticipation for the future, and just love of the past. It's a real shame we have to finish it, but we do need to finish it. Alec, I can't thank you enough. That was just amazing. Reading some of the responses, everyone has just gone absolutely mad for it. It's been terrific.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to your fans as well. I feel like England and London specifically, and the artists and the people there have been so integral to my career that I'm kind of an Anglophile, and I just have such a great appreciation for the talent historically that continues to come out of England. Fantastic. Anyway.
Brilliant. Well, on behalf of everybody, on behalf of Aliens Expanded, and you are a star of that show as well, I want everyone to know, and all the backers and everyone who's been on tonight, this has been just a fantastic hour. So, Alec, thank you so much.
Thank you all. Bye.
Cheers.